welcome back. This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So what I'm going to do in today's lesson is sort of a theme I've been doing, I would say, over the last month. I've been trying to identify real-time patterns that are developing to show for the lesson. All right. And today I'm going to bring up a tech stock and show you all the reasons why I think it has real explosive potential. I'm going to lean on ADX a little bit more in multiple timeframes. I think it'll give you a feel for why and how to narrow down your universe to identify the stocks that have pretty amazing potential, say over the next 6 to 12 months or maybe even longer. So let's go ahead and get into this lesson before we go through the symbol request that came through. Okay, so I've got the chart of Teradyne up, TER, and we've got the monthly in the bottom left, weekly bottom right, daily in the upper right, and then we've got another weekly with the zigzag and the relative strength and the RSI signals. All right, now the reason why I wanted to talk about this today and include it in the lesson is I think sometimes it's really good to see something developing in real time and be able to anticipate a little bit in terms of looking for an entry. But it's such a classic setup when I look at a kind of an across the board type of pattern. Now, there's a lot of these setting up. It's not just this stock. And really, I would say if there was anything that bugs me about this chart, of all these charts or any of all the indicators and everything I'm looking at from a price standpoint, it's just kind of this big red bar here you can see on the weekly. But beyond that, and I think there's been enough time. Remember, that took place in 22. All right. We had tax loss selling year here, tax loss selling here. So we've put ourselves through a couple of tax loss selling seasons that I think allow for this prior peak up here to have a little less significance. All right. That's really important. If this takes place and we're trying to get back above and we haven't had a tax loss season, I think you just have to think about it from a common sense standpoint. If people are going to give up on it, if they want to use it for tax loss selling, it's going to happen. And it could have happened anytime in the last few years. So to me, that makes this a little less important. All right. Now let's look at the signals that are developing. We'll start with the monthly and then work our way down. First of all, we've had a low ADX condition since early 2022. And while that was taking place, not only was the ADX low, but all three of the DI line, all three lines, right? The two DI lines and the ADX line were all below 25 for an extended period. Notice how the MACD line came down below, but the signal line basically skated along zero, and this came around. So it's really been trading around the zero level and has formed a double bottom. And now, obviously, we're emerging from the upside. But remember, we've got a low ADX condition. Low ADX condition means that's stored energy for a move. And when it happens on a monthly chart and it stays below for a couple years like this, not quite, about 2 years, then you know that there's probably some upside potential we're going to have some follow through. Now, if we go to the weekly chart, this one is the one that I think even looks even more attractive because we've got this beautiful base that had formed. And again, a low ADX condition especially for this last period. Now, we really have been low. It tried to make a few peaks above that never really got going. But you can see this most recent action is clearly qualifies based on the way I describe it in my book and my courses. This is a low ADX condition and we're breaking out above. And notice what green DI is doing. So if I put this line across, we're breaking above the highs and the peaks of both the red and the green DI going back for about a year and a half. Okay. And we're noticing that the blue line, the ADX line, is starting to move up. And we're also noticing that the sellers, the DI line, negative DI, is dropping. So this is the kind of pattern we want to see when we're breaking out. We're getting really good confirmation that this is strong buying. Look at the volume. You see how strong the volume is? So we're starting to check off all these boxes, monthly, weekly, good MACD, good ADX, low ADX, right? And then low ADX on this time frame, and we're starting to emerge, and we have good volume associated with it. Now, here's the kicker. When we have low ADX on 2 time frames, which we do right now, okay, low ADX, look at the daily chart. This was actually a low ADX period as well, and now it's emerging. So I wanted to point this out because momentum kicks off on the smaller time frames first. It's not going to start on the monthly and work its way down. It's actually going to go the opposite. You're going to see it on the smaller time frame. And in fact, you'll see it on the hourly before on the daily. But in this case, when we have low ADX on the monthly and low ADX on the weekly, we want this ADX to get going on the daily chart. And then we can go and look at what's taking place from a volume standpoint. You can see the clear signs of accumulation taking place and real buying underneath. Okay. Now, one of the things I like to do when we have a low ADX pattern in 2 time frames, and then the lower time frame, which was low ADX, kicks in. So that's the 3rd time frame down. We want that to cross above 25, and then we're looking really for the first pullback close at in the area of the 18. So we don't have, you had a breakout pattern here that you could have played. That was definitely an entry, but we're looking for the next entry here, and that's a pullback probably somewhere around 125. If it can do it from here, then we'd be looking somewhere around 125, 130, any kind of a little dip, a little bit closer to the 18, I think is what I would be looking for in this pattern because of how powerful it looks from an ADX standpoint. Now, we had an RSI buy signal, okay, which is a good confirming evidence, especially right before a breakout. I love to see that. The other thing that's incredibly important, and I'm going to zero in on this, is the relative strength starting to kick in. All right, look at this move. It had been declining, and this move is causing the relative strength to break its downtrend line and confirm what we're seeing on a momentum basis. Now, one of the big things I wanted to mention is that if we pull this chart up and I go and look at a yearly, all right, let's look at the yearly bar chart. This actually is coming out and taking out this prior high. Very important, I think, to notice how we're coming back into the area of this prior peak, right, which was a big kind of a spike high, but we got back into this area and we're getting back above it. So kind of a key level to be on the lookout for. And I just like to look at that perspective, because if I look at that and then I look at something like Nvidia, do you see the difference? Do you see how to me, there's a lot more potential upside on the yearly bar chart of something like Teradyne versus a stock like this, which is, to me, is exploited. And it looks to me like 1,000 could be a problem area after this monster big year it's already had. So I think it's just a good rule to just kind of go and take a look at that bigger picture pattern and see, how does that look from that standpoint. So not saying to trade off a monthly. I'm not even suggesting to trade off of a monthly chart. Stay away from the yearly, the quarterly, and the monthly from a trading standpoint, but use that as a backdrop as the potential upside. It gives us a real good feel for whether it's worth it and whether we feel like we're late or early. And I still feel like this is relatively early. We just need a little bit of a dip or pullback a little bit closer to the breakout area. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com along with my courses and my book. The individual package has about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video for that package. And I also give you access to the courses, to the main course as well. So take a look if you have an interest. Okay, so as we move into the symbol side, I want to show something else with respect to this ACP. So on the right here, I've got this set up for a market summary. And if you notice, we have the equities, which is the tab I'm on right now. We've got bonds, we've got commodities, and then we have crypto. So I had a request to go through the crypto. So I figured I would just show how easy it is to go identify these. And the way I have it set up is when I click on any one of these, all the charts switch over on the right, on the left. So I can quickly kind of run through these since they're all linked. And I'm just going to do that really quickly. So let me just move this over so we can see a little bit better. So let's start with Bitcoin. And we've got a really strong move, and something I was pointing out was this pullback to a rising 18 above a rising 40 with really strong momentum conditions in place. Now, we're in the area of this prior high. We were stretched away from the 18-month, but because the momentum is strong, I think, you have to respect momentum. I tend to respect momentum, and I think you know, the possibility is we're going to have another leg when we have good momentum conditions. Now, if we were to go up and make a new high and this were to keep dropping off, or maybe even drop under 25, or the MACD not get back above the signal line, then I might get a little bit more concerned. But in terms of trading, I still think there's an opportunity here on a pullback towards the 18 on the daily chart. I think that could be looked at as a potential opportunity. This was a very good setup that you could have played on this big green bar showing up on the daily chart. Big green bar after doing this. We went in the zone, came out, tried to break to a new low and couldn't follow through. Then moved up into the zone, made a higher low and formed basically an inverted head and shoulders. And the trigger is the big green bar. I've done some videos on some lessons on the big greenies, and I think it's a really good thing to be on the lookout for. Tend to happen a lot of times with a trigger, so very interesting. All right, let's start moving through a few of these. ETH. Again, the dynamics of this move were such that it moved into the zone, tried to break to a new low, went into the zone, tried to break to a new low. So we wanted to be on the alert for a sign of a move to the upside. Now, this is too big of a green bar. I wouldn't necessarily be buying. It's certainly not in the upper end of that bar. I mean, if you happen to catch it a little early because you were watching it, maybe. But now we probably are looking for some kind of a pullback here. But again, look at how this happens right at the 18 with strong momentum in place. Strong momentum here after breaking out. There is some room before we get to the prior high. Our XRP not is looking as attractive to me. It does look like there's pretty good support here, but I think we're going to need to see a little bit of strength on this time frame and then maybe buy the first pullback. DOGE. So this pullback was actually a little harsh. Okay, I mean, it was a little bit more violent. So we probably should expect a little bit of resistance as we work our way back up into that area. But I do fully expect that to take place. I would expect some kind of a trading move if we get a little pullback and we hold the moving averages on the daily. Look for a test of this high here. If the dynamics are strong enough, it could end up breaking through because the momentum is really good. The volume pattern is good here as well, and we've turned our bigger picture pattern back around to the upside. I just think we're dealing with a little bit of upside resistance, but the overall pattern does look pretty decent. Okay, BitcoinCash. So again, kind of a violent pullback, but not quite as bad as the DOGE. I would be watching for this to set up with a higher low. And then again, we could probably get some kind of a test towards this prior peak. Overall pattern looks good. Again, the momentum is good. And you can see the volume pattern. A lot of volume went in and that did not come out on the pullback. Even though it was a big down bar, there wasn't abnormal volume selling. Okay, let's look at Litecoin here. Again, look at the monster red. You see that monster red? So we need to get back above the midpoint of that, which essentially is where we tried to rally through. I think we're going to have to get back up through 90, and then we'd break the midpoint of this big monster red bar, and that would improve odds of a test of these prior levels. I don't know that it's really in as strong a position as some of these others. I don't know if it's really ready to break out at this point. Okay, let's look at EOS. Again, kind of a big drop. I don't like this as much. I don't think that momentum is quite as good here. Probably needs to get through $1, and then we could start to take this a little bit more seriously. Look at Binance coin. So look at this move. Look at the dynamics and the strength of this move to the upside, and notice how no one's coming out of this. You see how this is just pausing while the moving averages catch up? So we can play this as a breakout play. We've got low ADX on the daily with strong momentum on this time frame. Yeah, we're dealing with some resistance up here, so you got to be sure about understanding how to manage the risk in a trade like this, but I do think there is a potential trade to the upside. Okay, let's look at Chainlink. I think a little bit too deep of a pullback to expect this to turn on a dime. The momentum signs are actually pretty good, both MACD and ADX, but I would expect this to maybe form some kind of a move up and then maybe a higher low. So it could push through first and then make the higher low, or it could fail here. And then if it does that, we would want to be looking for a move back up through this prior high. But certainly something to be watching. I mean, I do like the fact that this has made a pretty nice looking move on the monthly back towards support. I just think it's a little bit early, maybe takes a little bit more time. And then finally, TRON. I don't know. I think this was too deep of a pullback. Again, I'm probably looking for some kind of a test and then a move back to the upside. The momentum signs aren't saying that this is failing, okay? The momentum is actually pretty good, but it does look like when we get a strong momentum condition that then drops down under, we're expecting a little bit more consolidation to take place. So that's, I think, what I would be on the lookout for there. So that's the run through the cryptos. All right, let's go through some of the symbol requests, and I'm going to start with the QQQ like I like to do. One of the things I wanted to point out is that we've made this move, we've broken out, we've got decent momentum confirmation on a MACD basis. We are seeing the green DI trying to get going here, but I want to see this ADX cross above 25 before it pulls back, or during a pullback. I'd like to see this keep going to the upside. So we need that to take place to feel confident in buying a pullback in this situation. It's not quite as strong as I'd like it to be. The volume isn't all that great. I know Nvidia is coming out with earnings this afternoon. I think a lot of people are waiting for that. So I think the reaction will be pretty important because it's such a heavy weight. It could have an influence if it misses or something like that. So something to be on the lookout for from that standpoint. As we keep talking about the Russell, I like the fact that this has tested support. It's making its second higher low. It's formed an RSI buy. The overall conditions are pretty good. I just want to see better momentum on the weekly chart, and then I think that'll click in and improve the relative line. All right, which is really what we're trying to key on. I'm not bringing this up. I don't have a problem if you bought this, and I actually think it looks pretty decent as a pattern, but what we're looking for is outperformance here, which will show that we have a better overall environment with expansion in the more names that are participating. Okay, so request on Apple. Let's look at this. So pretty good improvement. We tested and even undercut this little prior low a little bit. And we're making a pretty decent move back up through the moving averages. We held the 18-month essentially, but I look at this more like a trading range right now. All right, now what will make me feel a little bit better about this, because we have good momentum conditions in place, improving momentum conditions in place on the daily chart, we can look to play a pullback here. But we need to have a pullback that is not violent. Like, we don't want a gap down. We want a break of the moving averages. We need a sort of an orderly pullback back towards the moving averages and back towards maybe support at 180. I think if we get that, then this could be pretty interesting to play. But I caution you just to make sure we don't really want to jump the gun on this or assume that on a pullback it's going to hold. We need an orderly pullback in this situation because it's been trading a little haphazard, a little bit more range bound. All right. MRNA, Moderna. So the dynamics of this move are dramatically improving. All right. But we needed this first. Like, I don't know that I really want to jump the gun as soon as this starts to move up and say, oh, I'm going to buy a breakout. It wasn't a long enough low ADX condition for me to want to buy a breakout pattern. So now we've got strength coming in, and the way this is formed, we've broken the downtrend line, we've tested. So that's the 1, this is the 2, and now we've completed the 3. Okay, now we're showing momentum improvement. Now the MACD is crossing above the 0 line, and so is the signal crossing above 0. So we're watching for the first pullback now. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of patience, but getting through the 18-month line, getting the MACD going, getting the ADX going, it improves your odds of success dramatically. So I'm okay with paying up for this a little bit. Now I'd like to see it pull back, and I'd be watching and just kind of stalking this for the next pullback, because I think it might be a pretty interesting setup. Okay, so I got some questions regarding, I have 2 stocks that are new issue type stocks where we don't have a lot of history, especially on the monthly chart and the weekly. All right, my rule of thumb is I do not play off of a monthly, weekly combination if I don't have an 18-month line. If there's no 18-month line, I can't really say that I have a trend on this time frame yet. We don't have enough history to do that, but I can trade it off the weekly and the daily. All right, and if you notice what happened, we had a strong move to the upside, and we got a pullback here, and we got a pinch play, and we had strong ADX. Okay, ADX held and the green DI held above 25 during the pullback. Now, while that was taking place on the daily chart, we got our opposing trend pattern with our ABC decline with low ADX and a zero line reversal. So you could have looked at this as a trend line break and look at the big green bar showing up as this is turning back up right through and green DI is kicking in with good volume. All of that is to me, that was the entry. Now we'd have to wait for another pullback. We're getting close to earnings. I don't think there's anything to do right now, but I just wanted to make the point. You can play this if you have the 18 on the higher time frame. You can play it in the 2 time frame. You can't do it off of a monthly right now. Let's look at the KSPI. You see how we don't have an 18-month? In fact, we only have 5 months worth of trading, and we don't have any 18-week yet. Now, that's going to be coming up pretty soon, and I can just look at the price action here, and I can tell you what I think is going on. You made this move to the upside, and you have this monster red bar. Until we can exceed the midpoint of that, we failed at that. There's really nothing to do. But we want to see that get through. If that gets through, then we can play this off the daily and the hourly. Can't really do it off the weekly yet because we don't have an 18. All right, so that's my rule of thumb. You don't have to follow that. I'm just telling you, the question was asked how I handle it. But you have all these symbols on ACP. They're showing up here on the Stockcharts program. So you can start to follow and wait for that 18 to show up. And I think it's pretty advantageous. Once that 18 is there, it's helping you define the trend. And so it just tells me, okay, I've got at least enough history that I've got an 18. Okay, let's look at this Cocoa. So I think this is more of a longer term play because look at how this played out. Now we have an 18, right? That's all we have. We don't have a 40 yet, but look at the strength of the move. You see the ADX power behind it. And now we've consolidated back to the 18. Looks like we're trying to hold that. Green DI is held well above red DI, and we're holding above 25. So on a monthly basis, this is pulled back and is setting up. Now on the weekly chart, we had an overrun here. All right. And so I like to see this set up a little bit better. And what I've been saying to my subscribers is we want this to break out. This is a breakout pattern. I know we don't have a low ADX situation, but we have this pattern where we had the big green bar and we haven't had any follow through from that big green bar. I want to see it get through that. And then I'd have a lot more interest in this. I don't think I would jump the gun and try and play this just like it did last time. You see how it tried to get through and then we got a big red bar. Let's make it get through that key level, and then I think this looks a little bit more attractive. So Novo, question about this 135 level. Well, I see what you're saying. I see how 135 can feel somewhat important, but look at what's taken place in this. You see the move that this has already made? It's just so overdone. So when I see that, I understand that I need to buy this a little closer to the 18-week. And we can see what happened. It went down here, the 18 crossed below. We went in the zone, came out. We didn't have, and that was on earnings. It came down below, but it didn't follow through. So as it comes back up here is the entry. That's what I would be looking for if I were going to play this, but I have to play it as a weekly, daily, sort of like a trading play. This is not a long-term setup. Now you could look for this to make a little higher low here, and you could still play it off of this reversal pattern and still be relatively early because it's a low ADX situation. I just wanted to point out, I wouldn't look at this as a longer term play. You could look at it as a shorter term play. Thanks for watching the show today. If you have any stock requests you want me to discuss on next week's show, send it to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just go ahead and put it in the comment area below. Also, my YouTube channel is called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.